Alright, everyone, we're back with another edition of This Week in Fantasy. No guest this week. Throughout this entire season, I've had lots of guests. I don't think I've done a solo episode yet, but it's Thanksgiving morning, and we're going to blaze through this because Thanksgiving is known for football as much as it is the dry bird, and Week 13 is going to be great. So let's review Week 12. Rampy guzzles his first loss here against No Fried. No Fred putting up a moderate 84 points. Lamar Jackson popped off. Gurley has been really overrated this year. He's been serviceable, but for where a lot of people took him sort of desperately in the late first, early second, he's been pretty meh. And then Ronald Jones managed to do well. The Bucs are heating up. They're not nearly as bad as they were initially, and they sort of run it up in a lot of games in terms of offensive production. They get a lot of yards. A lot of times they're playing from behind because Jameis makes so many mistakes. And then we have the crux of the issue, Amari Cooper being defrauded in New England along with Jason Garrett. Cooper had a huge pass drop where he was running an over-the-middle route in a crucial part of the game, and he just couldn't hang on to it. And that really cost Aaron the game because he just needed a little bit of production from Cooper. Will Fuller got 140 yards. Real hit or miss guy, injury prone, but he hit this week. Other than that, Rampy's team looked pretty shitty, and DeAndre Hopkins and Mark Ingram carried for No Fried. So Aaron will not be going undefeated. This isn't an old rivalry between two teams that are out of it. Cam takes down the King of Funny. I'm not even going to go into it because neither one of them scored 70. Here's a really interesting week. This is a big rivalry between Jackson and Spencer. They don't really like each other. They historically have been two of the better owners in the league, and Jackson really popped off here. Leonard Fournette finally found the end zone. This is a guy who all season really has struggled to find the end zone, had one touchdown up until this point. Punched in twice with a lot of yards in the air as well. Somehow they still managed to lose, the Jags did. It's pretty funny when you look at the Jags overall. They went to that AFC title game against the Pats and actually looked good in the first half. And then they've been choking on chode ever since. They traded Mouthy Jalen Ramsey. And at this point, even with or without Nick Foles, they are a failure of a team. And they failed to capitalize on that year where they were Saxonville, flash in the Pansonville. Alvin Kamara, I mean, considering this was a top 4 drafted guy, he's been really disappointing. Ranked 13. I know he's missed a few weeks, but if you look at the game script for the Saints against the Panthers, they were actually using their other running back a lot, Murray. They would use Murray in these heavy ground and pound sets. And overall, you can see Kamara has had an incredible amount of trouble finding the end zone. Much like Fournette, he might get a decent amount of looks and he might get a lot of yards, but touchdowns are incredibly important in fantasy football. And as I pointed out in an earlier episode, you're almost better having a player who, consistently finds the end zone as opposed to just gets a lot of yards. Big reason why Kamara's not top 10. Godwin popped off as Mike Evans gets doubled, and the Buccaneers do everything in their power to try to come back from games that Jameis Winston has made it difficult to win. This is the guy that gets a lot of the looks when Evans isn't open. Randall Cobb looked decent while Cooper sucked a big chode, so that's good for Cobb. And Jackson really put up a big performance here. Spencer did manage to break 100. Cooper Kupp got 3. He was god tier early on in the season, sort of fallen off a little bit recently as the Rams are just exposed week after week. If you want to talk about another flash in the pan team, Sean McVay has been figured out. Goff is overrated and relatively inaccurate, and to be honest, I think the Rams will go 9-7. That Rams-Cowboys game near the end of the year is going to have massive implications on the NFC playoff picture, especially when you consider the Philadelphia Eagles have a much easier schedule than the Cowboys. Lots of borderline auto wins built into that schedule for Philly. Barkley is another guy that's been really disappointing. another top 4 pick consensus, ranked 19. Obviously, he got banged up. He only missed 3 weeks when a lot of people thought he was going to miss more. Last year, the Giants used him a lot more. It was really all about Saquon Barkley. I think with Daniel Jones now, they're trying to develop Jones more than they are just try to straight up win games. Last year, it was sort of like, oh, we're competitive. This is an ongoing thing with the Giants where the front office sort of delusionally states that they're going to be competitive every year, even though everybody knows they're not. And this has sort of led to Barkley having a Zeke Elliott type year where he clearly has the talent but has a lot of poor performances where he is sort of embarrassed and shut out of the game completely. Big win for Jackson, 6-6. He can finish strong, 8-6, and I think that whenever you, let's just make sure, yeah, okay. I think that whenever you consider, okay, yeah, Jackson could go 8-6, like 8-6 doesn't even really seem like an off year, you know, even if you miss the playoffs. So that's what he's shooting for. Spencer, the best he can do is have a losing record. So Spencer's worst season by far. New guys in Sam. Sam is garbage. And even at the beginning of the season, I said his team sucked. Clapford put up 96. Derrick Henry's been god tier for him. Lilly and Cgauch. Not much to say here. Lilly's team has no depth. Aaron Jones choked on Chode. The Packers are another team that are really overrated. The only way they make it anywhere in the playoffs is if they get to play the fucking Cowboys, who always lose to them no matter what. OBJ finally had some points. He's not even top 20. This is a guy that people are clamoring over to draft every year, and he's pretty much always disappointing, whether it be injuries or just ineptitude. Pretty much made a career off of that one big catch and a lot of dick ride from the media. Another guy sort of has quitter syndrome like Zeke. Yeah, boring game. Cgauch takes it to stay even with me because I also won my game with about the same amount of points as Cgauch. Beating Weston here, a division rival. I think this is the first year where I've 2-0'd Weston. Historically has a very good record against me. Tom Terrific looked tepid in the bad New England weather with no weapons to speak of, frankly. I mean, if you put Randy Moss in his prime back on this Patriots roster like it's 07, I think the Pats are a clear Super Bowl favorite. But when Brady's throwing to fucking Mohamed Sanu, who's like hurt half the time, and you know, a bunch of forgettable people, frankly, it's not a very good offense. Edelman, like, he's not a legitimate number one guy. Coleman managed to find the end zone and a just shellacking of Green Bay. Chris Carson had a bad week because Rashad Penny was popping off and they just rode the hot hand. Julio Jones continues to be somewhat disappointing. Now he is top 10, but he's on a huge touchdown dry spell. Him, like Michael Thomas, does get a consistent amount of high targets, so it sort of limits the suckage. We can see Thomas here rank 1. He might set the record for most receptions. Very consistent, strong player. Eric Ebron got the start because he had a Thursday game and I was on a degenerate sleeping schedule and forgot about it. Kettle was questionable for up until game time, so I probably should have swapped him out, but between Thursday and I think the Green Bay game was a night game. So if it turns out game time decision Kettle can't play, your options are highly limited, so I just hedged and went with Ebron. Singletary is pretty much taken over as I thought he would at the beginning of the year. Gets a lot of touches and an offense that is pretty average but serviceable, and they have a decent defense. They play a lot of weak games, so he got a lot of touches. Will Lutz managed to beat the Carolina Panthers when his opposition, Joey Slyly, was just an absolute clown. Single-handedly lost the Panthers the game and their playoff hopes. This was a guy who missed 2 extra points and then a chip shot field goal. That's one of those performances where you half expect the kicker to be booted the next day, okay? He was just utterly defrauded. Then the Bills' defense who I picked early on, and they've been decent. I've streamed when they've had hard matchups, but anytime your defense puts up over 10, it's solid. Speaking of solid, this is a solid win for me. Weston definitely having one of his worst years. You know, with Weston being defrauded like this, I've got to ask, is this Billy guy, Billy Bean? Let's move on to week 13. Let's just start off with the most important game. This is Christian versus me. We're both 8-4, and to be frank, this is a huge matchup, a rivalry somewhat. Not as much vitriol and hatred in this rivalry as some of the others, but definitely a friendly rivalry that goes way back, and this is an important game for both of us because presumably whoever gets the wild card as opposed to the division has to play Aaron, who looks very scary despite taking a loss. So let's jump into the matchup. Tom Terrific versus Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray has been better than I thought he would, as have the Cardinals, and because Murray runs a decent amount, he's top 10. This is a typical Cgauch pick. Flashy, unproven, high risk, high reward, but Murray being consistently good and hitting for him. Notice Murray has only had a couple bad weeks, and he's had a lot of 22 plus point weeks, so this is a nice pick by the Gauch. Zeke Elliott, even though he got his payday, he has turned in a lot of really soft performances that make you want to just rip that septum right out of his massive nostrils. And to be honest, whenever you watch Zeke Elliott play, it is very shocking to see the guy with the best offensive line in the league and the biggest running back contract in the league just quit so quickly. This is a guy who, anytime the going gets tough, he can have a couple bad drives and he's just going to mentally check out. We saw signs of this with that Denver game where they played up in Denver a couple years ago, but Zeke has been absolutely wretched whenever it comes to mental toughness. Now overall, he puts up top 10 fantasy numbers still. He has incredibly high usage and the best line in the league, but this should be in the top 3. So he also gets a lot of red zone looks, Tevin Coleman has been decent overall when you consider that he had a little injury and then he's sort of in a timeshare. He does find the end zone relatively frequently, and I feel like he's definitely better off than he was out in Atlanta. Chris Carson, hopefully he gets a lot of touches and it's not the Rashard Penny show again. You know, earlier in the season it looked like that might be a threat. As you can see, he had fumbleitis early on in the season, but it wasn't really the case through the middle part of the season because Carson was just getting pretty much every carry, consistently getting top 5 touches for running backs week after week. It was really only last week where we saw the resurgence of Penny. So hopefully that was an aberration and they were just riding the hot hand because Penny did have a great game. Julio Jones is playing New Orleans. Atlanta has looked less awful lately than they did in the early part of the season, but Julio Jones really has to catch a touchdown here. This will be an interesting little mirror match tonight on Thanksgiving. Hopefully both of these guys absolutely pop off and it's a shootout. George Kittle has another DNP. I'm just going to assume he's going to play like in the previous week when he had a DNP. And if not, God knows what I'm going to do because Ebron's hurt. Not that he was very good to begin with. On the Cgauch side of things, we have the boomer bust, Tyreek Hill, who is either god tier or awful usually, and he was nursing a hammy injury earlier. This is a guy who can put up 30 and solo win a game for you. Very scary player, and they're playing Oakland, coming off of an absolute ass blasting at the hand of the Jets jokes, led by the quarterback whisperer Dave Gettleman, and they call him that because he emptied Peyton Manning's bong water once. Tyreek Hill, I think, will have a very good game. I expect him to go for 15 plus and outperform Julio. DJ Moore is a guy who benefited from the flashy Cam Newton being, we can call it injured, but let's call it what it is, bench, because I don't believe that Cam Newton actually, that foot injury was, it was so severe he couldn't come back. If the Panthers really wanted him to come back, I think he could have played, but Kyle Allen is a way better pocket passer than Cam Newton, who, as a person, is more concerned about his wardrobe post-game than he is about actually winning. This is a guy who had the opportunity to win a Super Bowl and was too soft to dive for a loose ball that he himself fumbled. I don't think I'll ever forgive him for that as a Panther fan, and hopefully he gets traded to Miami or some joke organization that needs a quarterback. And I'm not happy Tua got hurt, Tua Tagovailoa, that Bama quarterback that everyone is just clamoring over each other to deep throat. However, I think it is worth noting that Tua sustained a severe injury, and the whole tank for Tua thing has sort of gone to shit. Now, personally, I didn't think Tua was good enough to be worth tanking for to begin with. However, at this point, that really increases Cam Newton's trade value for one of these teams really needing a quarterback. I don't really have any idea what they can get back for him, frankly. Hopefully draft picks or maybe some line help. But DJ Moore has seen a huge boost in his stock, as has Curtis Samuel on my bench, so that's a solid 1-2 combo for the Cgauch. Sony Michel has been pretty meh. The Patriots' offense, frankly, has been pretty meh. They are relying on the run more, so that's good. I would edge Carson over Michel, though, and I would definitely edge Zeke over Coleman. O.J. Howard and George Kittle. Kittle's 10 times the player, but there's a little bit of an injury issue with Kittle, but I'm still going to pick him. Singletary should look good versus Dallas. Dallas's best defensive player, Leighton Vander Esch, is out. Is a neck injury. Hopefully he doesn't become Sean Lee V2. Speaking of Sean Lee, he's still on the roster, still playing, still pretty good, but it really blew my mind that last year in the NFC playoffs, the Cowboys were just getting absolutely run over by C.J. Anderson, and they continuously trotted out nickel and dime packages, let Sean Lee sit on the bench. It's very rare that you have a linebacker that talented on your bench, and it is absolutely mind-blowing and really speaks to Jason Garrett as a coach that they allowed Sean Lee to sit on the bench when they were getting railroaded by thick boy C.J. Anderson. So moving on from that, we have Myers, Seattle's kicker, versus Will Lutz. Myers has been above average to average, but Lutz plays for a high-powered offense with their quarterback healthy, playing a shit-tier defense. You've got to give Lutz the edge here. The only way Lutz doesn't get the edge is if the Saints put up 35 and it's all extra points. Packers and Panthers D, both playing awful NFC East offenses. I actually am going to edge the Panthers here because I think Haskins has looked significantly worse than Daniel Jones, and he also has less weapons. Ancient Adrian Peterson and Scary Terry being the only two worth note. So in this incredibly important matchup, I'm going to give the slight advantage to myself. However, it is worth noting that with Tyreek Hill due for a big week, Cgauch could easily win. I have about a 70 point scored advantage, and I have the head-to-head at the moment. I beat Cgauch earlier. Yeah, so I'm leading by 72, which is like an insurmountable advantage at this point in the year. So if Cgauch wins here, and we end up tying after the last week of the season, that means that the tiebreaker, since we're 1-1, assuming he beats me this week, will go down to points scored. So Cgauch pretty much has to win 2 straight or have me lose 2 in a row. Huge matchup. I'm not even going to review this. Literally no one cares. Jackson versus Clap4. Let's see. Jackson has 6 wins. Cgauch and I have 8. It makes it hard since Cgauch and I have a head-to-head. That means his outs are highly limited. So it'll be, I don't even know if Jackson has a chance of making the playoffs, because I beat him head-to-head, and I'm not sure about the Cgauch. But it's going to be very, very hard for him to win. Pretty much Jackson needs me to beat Cgauch this week, and then Cgauch to lose next week, and he's going to have to reel off 2 straight. Although Kevin's only 8-4 too, this is an interesting little dynamic. Alright, so let's jump into this. Nick Foles playing Tampa, he'll light it up. Same with Fournette. Tampa's soft as fuck defensively. Chimera is also due for a big week. Thielen, who loves to talk shit to Bill Belichick, healthy, love that. He's playing Seattle. Godwin had a huge week. I just really have to edge Jackson here because when I look over at the Commission's side of things, it's weaker across the board. Ingram's nursing an injury. Mahomes is exceptional, and I think he'll have a great week. And of course, Henry and Chubb are both good. I just definitely give Jackson the advantage here, especially at the receiver position. Yep, I give Jackson the edge here. No one cares. I mean, basically, this is a matter of Spencer's like basically trying to get to 6 and 8. You know, going 6 and 8 is a lot less embarrassing than going 4 and 10 and being at the bottom of the division or the whole league. You know what I mean? Aaron and Cam. Aaron's gonna raffle stomp him, and then Ben and Mark. No one cares. So really, no point in going through these elimination matchups where people are already fucking gone. But if we look at the playoff picture here, Weston's out, because remember there's only 2 games left. So Weston's out, Lily's out, Spencer's out. No, the new guys is out. No Fried is just competing for a wild card spot. Cam's out, Ben's out. So no Fried if he were to win this week, and then he plays me in the final week of the season. Assuming I lose to the Cgauch and lose to him, he would be a wild card threat. Jackson, I think, probably has the best team that's looking at the wild card at the moment. This fucking website is a joke sometimes. See, and he plays Ben, who's not very good. Final week. So if we look at the final week, if we do a little bit of shadow boxing here, this matchup's irrelevant. Spencer Weston. Aaron's locked, and the new guys is out of it. So Cgauch plays Clapfor, who's very good. Division leader, irrelevant matchup, Watson's. So this is nice that the teams that actually have a chance are actually playing each other, and it's not some dumb thing where people get walkover wins. But this matchup will be interesting because it has a lot of wildcard implications, and this week as well has a lot of wildcard implications. And No Fried's playing Ben. It would really simplify things if Ben were to just straight up beat No Fried. And then pretty much Cgauch and I would only have to worry about Jackson. Anyway, that's the video. Quick little playoff picture. Expect a full episode next week.